Thank you so much. My name's Peter Bauer. I'd like to ask you, are there many people on the Israeli side doing the sort of work with the same sort of ideas that you've got? And if so, can you tell us a little bit about them or about it? Because at the moment it seems almost to be a bit one-sided.
Actually, in 2007, when I started the Wasatia Movement, the reason I started that movement was that in 2006 Hamas was elected, and Hamas, when Hamas was elected, it was elected because it ran on slogans of transparency, change, accountability, and these were slogans people liked, and so they voted for Hamas. But when Hamas came to power, then people found out that these were empty slogans. And late that year, people started to be disappointed with Hamas and its performance. I was among them because I supported Hamas being elected, because I thought that this will be multi-party system rather than a one-party system, which is more democratic. However, Hamas, although it ran on the Oslo framework, refused to acknowledge the Oslo framework, and that was also part of the problem. So one Friday morning, I was standing on the balcony of my office overlooking a checkpoint, and there were many, more than 1,000 Palestinians trying to cross the checkpoint to go to Jerusalem to pray. It was a Friday morning. It was Ramadan, first week of Ramadan, and the Israeli soldiers were actually pushing them back and throwing tear gas at them and trying to block because they did not have permits. And I thought that these are radical Muslims. They are Hamas. They are all types of Hizb al-Tahrir, and so they will want to make a media event. And so the soldier will shoot at them, and then it will become a media event. However, after a while, I noticed that things cooled down, and there was more action in which the Israeli officer at the checkpoint made a deal with the people, in which he brought buses and he took their IDs, and then the buses took them to the Haram to pray, and the buses brought them back, gave them their IDs, and they went home. So I thought that this was a very smart move by the Israeli officer. At the same time, I thought that the Palestinians who did that were moderate and accepted the deal. So the question on my mind was, who represents them? These people are not radical. These people, and that's how we started the Wasatia. And we based it on Wasatia in Islam. But then I found out that there is also moderation in Christianity. There is moderation in Judaism. And so in this way, we started to connect with moderates and started to do interfaith dialogue, in which a Muslim, a Jew, and a Jewish rabbi, and a priest, Christian priest, we go and speak to the community. And this opened the door for me to get to know the Jewish community. And I tend to find that there was great interest among them regarding moderation, and regarding, it was also, they were very much interested to know to what extent our message is spreading among Palestinians. And I was on the board of the interfaith council, which was headed by Rabbi Ron Kronish, and we used to do a lot of activities within the Jewish community. And I believe that there is an acceptance to the concept of moderation within the three communities. But the point is, the politicians actually are making, or the media also is making it look as if it is not spreading thing, but rather an individual thing. So if you ask people in Palestine about Wasatia and moderation, they will tell you, oh, this is Mohammed Dajani only, which is as if it is a one voice. And my response is very simple. I say thank you very much for all this credit, but always one voice will become two voices, then it will become three voices, and one day it will become the majority of voices. And this is history. And that's why I'm very optimistic that moderation one day will be more prevalent than extremism.
First of all, thank you for your wonderful talk and the excellent work that you are doing in getting the two groups to understand the suffering the other group has experienced. My question to you is, to what extent you think your work is made more difficult by the Israeli building settlements, constructing settlements in the occupied land? Do you find that such actions make your job more difficult? Thank you.
It definitely does, on both sides, because when the Israelis actually build settlements and they do not show much interest in the negotiation process, and on the other side also the Palestinian Authority do not make statements regarding the peace process and the work that it complicates things, and it makes our work difficult because all the time people ask me, they say, what do you think that moderation will help in order to have us regain our rights? And look at the other side, they are building settlements and nobody cares. The world looks and ignores, and the world is a bystander, and there is nothing we can do except resort to violence. And I say, no, there is something you can do, is resort to peaceful measures, adopt moderation, and this will undermine the other. I think the more we adopt moderation, the more this will take the tool from the other, because both sides, radicals on the sides, feed on this insecurity that people have, and as a result, they are getting empowered by that. But if the radicals on both sides actually are focusing to get people in the middle to vote for them. And for instance, when Fatah was elected, Fatah constituted 10% of the recruiting power of the voters, yet they got most of the majority from the middle. When Hamas in 2006 was elected, it was also elected from the middle, people voting from the middle. Now the middle is disenchanted with Hamas and with Fatah, but they want a third alternative. That's why we are trying to be that third alternative by speaking to them in their own language, which is religion, but moderate religion, in order that Hamas will not appeal to them. At the same time, on the other side, the Israeli voter worried about what he sees, which is extremism on the other side, and so he feels more secure with an extremist government. However, if he looks at the other side and see moderate voices, then his tendency, this will empower the peace camp within Israel. That's why we feel that when there is this anti-normalization movement refuses to deal with the Israeli community, particularly the peace camp and people who are calling for end of occupation or are fighting for the Palestinian rights among Israelis, we find it to be not productive to the Palestinian cause, because we need Israeli voices and we need Israeli support. And without that support, it will be impossible for us to achieve independence. And we need the other to give us that support, and this support we can find peace. And we cannot do that without dialogue, without working with the other. And so that's why it's difficult for us to work in order to convince people of this path that we have taken.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, Professor. I just want to let you know that I'm actually a guide at the Sydney Jewish Museum, and to let you know that we actually have a lot of Islamic schools come and visit the museum and do tours and understand what has happened to the Holocaust. And this is their own teachers bringing them to the museum. So they're following a lot of the views that you've been practicing over there in Palestine, and we give them a lot more reasons than your 7 reasons as to why they should be studying, that they should appreciate democracy, to not be bystanders, and to not stereotype. And I think it's important to learn that we tend to stereotype Middle Eastern people, and Middle Eastern people stereotype Jewish people, and I think it's very important that they learn how dangerous that can be, and that really comes from the lessons of the Holocaust. Do you see, just a question, do you see that there's any possibility of a 2-state solution being actually worked out?
I definitely do. I think that the solution is so simple. I look at the conflict and I don't see problems. And for instance, one starting point, okay, Israel wants the Palestinians to acknowledge it as a Jewish state. Palestinians want Israel to acknowledge the state of Palestine in the United Nations. So, okay, it is so easy for Abbas to say it will not cost him anything, to say we do acknowledge the Israel as a Jewish state. Okay, if Israel wants to be a theocracy, that's for Israel to decide. So he should not be opposed to that. And at the same time, for Israel to support the Palestinian state in the United Nations, basically for one reason. Israel says that this should come after negotiations. But I'm saying to the Israelis that negotiations with whom? Because if you are saying that the Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, is an anachronism, Palestine Liberation Organization. It is neither a Palestine because now it is Palestine and Israel. It's not liberation because we are saying that we acknowledge the other. And in Oslo, and there was an acknowledgement. And it's an organization. Do you want, as a state, make an agreement with an organization? At the same time, the Palestinian Authority was established as a result of Oslo for 4 years. And so its term of expiry is long overdue. So with whom do you want to negotiate, and with whom do you want to make an agreement? With an entity that will end when the state comes, and then the state says, I have nothing to do with that entity. So that's why we believe that there should be a state in Palestine, and it is in the best interest of Israel to recognize that state, and in this way to negotiate with a state on an equal level, a state with a state, and whatever agreement will be reached, it will have a better base on international law than an agreement with an authority or with an organization. And so this is one solution. Jerusalem, they say, oh, we cannot. This is the most complex issue. It's not at all. Okay, look at Jerusalem. Jerusalem actually is 2 cities in one. There is the religious city, because if you look at Robert's paintings of Jerusalem in the late 1800, you tend to say the city and the wall, and the Ottomans built us for that wall, and so it is the holy places are within the old city. So, okay, internationalize this section. What remains is the city outside, which is the municipal city. Okay, divide that municipal city into an Israeli and an Arab city. It is still now, and when the Israelis say it is unified, it will never be divided, what are you talking about? If you go to the west side of the city and stop a taxi and tell him, take me to the east side, and once he knows that, he will never take you, no matter what, he says no. So there is a psychological barrier there anyway. I'm against having walls and separation, but you can now also the borders. We cannot have agreement without borders. We have to have borders. What are you talking about? Go to Europe. You cross from Germany to France, and they will tell you there was a border over here. So borders are not holy, are not anymore. Maybe during the British in the 18th century, 19th century they were, but today this is a globalized world. We were living before without borders. Before even 10 years we were living without borders. So now the borders, we cannot live without borders? It's nonsense. And with the refugees, okay, the refugees, the right of return, the right is holy, but the return is negotiable. So basically, let the Palestinians, they can go back to the state of Palestine. Because even the Palestinians who are abroad, they want their rights to be recognized. But if it comes down to it, the Palestinians are not going to go and live in Israel under Israeli sovereignty and to be sworn to the Israeli flag, to serve in the Israeli army. They want to go back to Palestine. So basically, and the same thing with the Jews. They would like to find their identity in a state. And so this is why it should be two-state solution. At least for a period of time. After that, things can work out to make like a confederacy, like whatever. But in the beginning, first stage, there should be two states, because it is the national aspiration of a Jew to be in a Jewish state, and it's a national aspiration of a Palestinian to be in a Palestinian state. So what else? These are some of the problems. If you look at them, they are solvable, and there is nothing really there which is so impossible to solve. And I keep thinking of Ireland. A few weeks before the Friday Agreement, they took a poll in which a majority said that they did not think that there will be peace. And then 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, the Friday Agreement was signed and there was peace. I think I'm optimistic that things God might bless us with peace one day, and people will wake up and the conflict is over, because it is an artificial conflict. In the beginning, it started to be political. Now it is religious, and people are digging argument to make it religious. And in order for the conflict to go on, because honestly, so many people will go out of job if the conflict is over, because they have built their job around the conflict. So some people. I was yesterday at the university, and a Jewish student was telling me, but Israel should not pay for the compensation for the Palestinians unless the Arabs pay for the Jews who left the Arab countries. And I told him, don't worry, the international donors will pay to Israel and to Palestinians. So don't worry that Israel will not be paying anything anyway. And so it is the international donors. Qatar is paying $200 million to have the world football game there, $200 billion. So it is, you are talking about, it can build the Middle East 2 times or 3 times. And so he's worried about who is going to pay whom. So it is not, that's not the problem. So basically, if you want to think about problems and solutions, there are solutions. And these solutions can be achieved.
Thank you. A final question. Yes.
Hi, my name's Deandra. I am a student at Macquarie University and I recently completed Poll 278, which is a study of Middle Eastern politics by Dr. Jemana Beyer. And she said, along with some others, such as Noam Chomsky, that the idea of a two-state solution might have passed because of the settlements and that it has encroached on Palestinian land too much. There he is. Do you think that there is an idea of a one state where Israelis and Palestinians can live together as a lot of Israeli Arabs live together in the state now?
Let me be honest with you. The Israelis think of a state that is Israeli. And the Palestinians, when they think of one state, they think of a Palestinian state. So basically, when Palestinians are saying that the settlements is making now a one state, that it is killing the two state and making one state, what they are saying is to scare the Israelis into that, okay, we are one state. The Israelis, because of demography, are saying we cannot have a one state because the Arabs tomorrow, they will become a majority and they will take over. So basically, we are talking about continuation of conflict, and rather than. So that's why there should be a two states, and the settlements in no way would kill the two states because what is Palestinian? Well, it is agreed that the idea of borders, that Israel will return to the 1967 borders with adjustments in which they will barter land. And with regard to the settlements before were actually removed from Sinai, from Egypt, from Gaza. And so now here you can make the settlers decide. Those who would like to stay under Palestinian sovereignty can do so. Those who want to go and live in Israel can do so. And so in this way, you can try to resolve this issue of settlements, because basically settlements are built on illegally acquired land, or it is by international law, those settlements are illegal. So you cannot make them legal by forcing them as a de facto. So that's why, in that sense, it's a win-win situation where you can, like in Jerusalem, Israel does not have sovereignty over Jerusalem in international law. And so if you, no matter who talks, who says this is by international law, there is no Israeli sovereignty. But if there will be a deal, then there will be a deal that will give that sovereignty to Israel on the West Jerusalem. And in this way, by international law, the same thing applies to the settlements. You can build, it's a waste of money, because if tomorrow there will be a settlement, and the first thing will be about to give them the choice whether they would like to remain or to. With regard, there was an agreement with the Palestinians at Camp David that the big settlements like Ma'ale Adumim and Basgat Ze'ev and others, that they will remain Israeli. But we are talking about all these settlements that are being built in that way. The big settlements, it was talked about that there will be exchange, barter in terms of land. But the other settlements, they will, in my view, the way to resolve them is to give them the choice. Before we end, I would like to just tell you something about the work that we are doing for the future at Wasatia. People ask, why don't you teach your children about moderation or about empathy or about... And my answer is because we don't have teachers to do that. So basically, out of this complex situation, something positive came out, because we signed an agreement between Wasatia and the Friedrich Schiller University, in which we are working on a PhD program. And this PhD program, we want to take 20, 30 students who will work on reconciliation, on empathy, on learning about the others. Maybe among them could be Israeli students, international students, and Palestinian students, where they could work 2 years in Palestine on their degree, and then they go for the third year to finish that degree at the Frederick Schiller University and graduate from Frederick Schiller University. And in this way, we want to bring educators who are equipped and with the skills of reconciliation. And in order to promote that concept within the Palestinian community, there are many in Israeli communities and the Israeli universities who teach about conflict resolution, empathy, but there is none among within the Palestinian universities. So this will be the first program as a PhD, because Palestinian universities do not offer a PhD, and it is the first program in the Arab world that teaches about reconciliation. We are even trying to convince countries like Dubai or Abu Dhabi to have a center there where they could have a PhD program on moderation and reconciliation. But so far, it's not working. But I believe that this would be a positive outcome of the conflicts, of the complex situation that resulted from this trip. So in the Quran it says, albeit you might hate something that might turn out to be for your best interest. So maybe this uproar and against me, and maybe it has resulted in something positive. Thank you very much.